Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages. I am Sean Anderson, Most Valuable Podcast, and the upcoming segment is from our full Fast Break podcast that we recorded. And if you do want to check out that full podcast, head over to Blog Talk Radio /The Fast Break. You'll be able to find the full podcast over there.
This podcast is brought to you by Most Valuable Podcasts, leading the league in podcasting entertainment.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages. This is the Fast Break Podcast. I'm your host, and I'm back, Sean Anderson, and I'm joined, as always, as Ricky Widmer.
What's up, guys?
And Dave Oster.
What's up, everybody?
The gang's back, and fuck you, Dave, for bringing that crap in.
And I'm glad that you said I'm back, because today, as we are recording this
historical
podcast, the anniversary of when Jordan said, I'm back in a press release.
Oh, look at that.
That's today.
So
Topical.
I am Michael Jordan, and you're John Starks.
No.
So we championship next year?
Okay, Michael Jordan,
Scottie Pippen.
Oh.
I am not Rodman.
You're not. You're John Starks, because you're fighting us.
Dang.
No.
And you're not cool enough to be Ewing.
No.
Ben can be Ewing. Anyways, we're talking draft. It's a whole draft podcast because the NBA, it's kind of getting repetitive. We're not in playoff time yet. We already talked about 8-seed races, and MVP, we can talk about that later when it's getting closer to that time.
Yep.
So we're going to cover the draft. It's NCAA tournament time. We've been watching a lot of NCAA tournament stuff. I've been taking off school to watch it. So we're going to get into the draft. First topic that we're going to talk about is Malik Monk versus De'Aaron Fox, and we're going to talk about Jason Tatum, and then we're going to talk about Lonzo Ball and Markelle Fultz. But let's get into the Monk and De'Aaron Fox topic because that was one of the things that we mentioned, that you mentioned, Ricky, before we started the podcast, and you mentioned can De'Aaron Fox jump Malik Monk in the NBA draft? And I said no, and then you two kind of just started going at it, and we had a decent conversation flowing. So I think Malik Monk is at least a top 5 player. I think he's that special. I think, yes, he can be inconsistent at sometimes, but looking at his ability, I think it's just much more there than De'Aaron Fox's ability. But Dave, what do you like about De'Aaron Fox so much that you were really defending him early on before we started the podcast?
To be completely honest, I like the fact that he's kind of grown into his own as the year's gone on. Early in the year, it was mostly the Malik Monk show out there with him taking over games. De'Aaron has gained some confidence in himself. He seems to be running the floor a whole lot better as a general. And even when he's off ball, he's always active. He's always in motion, always looking to set up that next opportunity for his team. So I think that it's more of how I've seen him grow versus with Monk. I haven't seen a ton of growth. His outside shots there, his inside shots there, he is still a very good scorer. But his inconsistency, he's yet to settle that out. Like, he is just hot or not. So I think for me, it's personally the overall consistency and growth of De'Aaron Fox over Malik Monk's possibly insanely high top end for scoring, but also you have to live with the lows.
No, with me, it's the thing with, like Dave said, with Monk, it's one of those things where, of course, he can shoot the ball, but it's, for me, there's so much inconsistency with it. And when I say that, it's you look down the stretch. Yeah, the last 2 games in the SEC tournament, he shot 42 and 41% from the field. But the game against Georgia, 1 for 7. The game against Northern Kentucky that we just saw a night ago, 3 of 11 from the field. So it's one of those things where if you're looking overall at Malik Monk, it's one of those things where, yeah, I'm happy with what he can bring, but it's one of those things where it's also, can he bring it day in and day out? Because I'm looking at a lot of here. There's 2 games. There's 4 of 12, 3 of 11, 4 of 14 over here. He's got some kind of bad shooting games in a kind of overall season that is fairly good. And with me, if I'm looking for a team, if I don't have that guy that can take over a game, I've seen De'Aaron Fox have that little bit of that nugget in him to take over a game at the point. I'll take De'Aaron.
What are you talking about? Malik Monk has taken over games. Have you looked at that UNC game where he put up 47 points? He took over that game and won that game for Kentucky. The Florida game, he took that game over late when Kentucky was down going in. He won that game. The Vanderbilt game recently where he put up 27. Yeah, he didn't have that great of a shooting night, but he still took over. I look at Malik Monk and I see that elite scoring. Yes, he's inconsistent, but he's only 19 years old. You see that shot so young, and I so hard to go away from a guy like that. And with De'Aaron Fox, I mean, he's been banged up a little bit. He's had ankle injuries, and especially with a guy who's so quick, there's been rumors coming out and at least some studies going out about Russell Westbrook, how he's changed the way he's been running and how it's limited his injuries. Maybe that's brought up where De'Aaron Fox might not be running correctly, and yes, he's so fast, but the pressure he's putting on his legs might lead to more injuries down the road, where Malik Monk scoring is just something that's in your blood. I mean, you can be Kobe, and he shot, 30% in his last game, but he still put up 60. I'm not saying Malik Monk's going to be Kobe, but even D Wade now, scorers just score, and that's one thing that I really like about Malik Monk is that the kind of creating his own shots is going to come along, his passing ability is going to come along because he is so young, and seeing the scoring and his shot just so early on, that's what makes Malik Monk a more attractive kind of prospect to me, because you see the ability to just go off, and you see the ability to take over games, and you see the ability to take over big games. I mean, the game against Florida, the game against UNC, he's been able to take over big games against big opponents. He's also been able to kind of shy away from that. You look at the Louisville game right after the UNC game, but still, I look at Malik Monk, and he does look to me to have that killer instinct where it looks like De'Aaron Fox, he kind of hides behind Malik Monk in some games, where Malik Monk has that personality to say, I will take over a game.
Right.
And I know De'Aaron Fox
is the Kentucky effect. Like what you're talking about right now, that's the Kentucky effect. Like that's what Coach Cal has. It's not just one player each and every day. I wasn't saying that Monk doesn't have it, but it's one of those things with me. It's this draft between these two players are going to be very much onto what fit they are for the team and what that team needs. And the thing that I think might hurt De'Aaron Fox but help out Monk is there's teams early on in the draft that are like, we got a point guard. Or they might be like, well, you know what, we need a point guard, but we're going to take Fultz, we're going to take Ball. We might even take Dennis Smith over a De'Aaron Fox. That might end up hurting Fox. Whereas Monk, hey, we need a shooting guard. Let's go take Malik.
And I think especially with Fox's inability to shoot threes is probably the biggest thing that hurts him. He's only shooting at a 23% clip, where Monk is able to get up around 39%. And again, with his inconsistency, if he's able to get more consistent, that might be up to around 41%. So obviously, there's a lot to like about Fox. There's a lot to like about Monk. Dave, looking at Fox, what's the biggest thing you take away from his game that you really like and might be the thing that will really help him succeed in the NBA?
Honestly, the one thing that he already does is he's very good off of just get the ball in his hands, and he can just jack up quick shots. But what I want to see more is him off ball, making an effort on the court, actually using his body and using his teammates to get himself better shots, because a lot of the time I see him settle and just he's a statue on offense. It's give me the ball so I can score, and if I don't have it, I'm not moving. So I want to see him more active, and maybe like Ricky said, it's a system with Kentucky where your job, it's kind of like with Cleveland. Your job is to stand on the outside or near that 3-point line. Don't you dare move. But I think for him, it's he needs more movement on his offensive game. He needs to be more involved with the ball. And honestly, the biggest thing, I like what Ricky mentioned about the fit for teams, because that's one of the things, like today in the NBA, I don't think we've ever had such a surplus in point guards who are, I don't want to say like starters, but really good quality point guards who I think we're over like 20, 25 of them without even a doubt, and you can get them relatively cheap. So like the value of a shooting guard is what might help out Monk better.
Yeah, and the question obviously is, can De'Aaron Fox surpass Malik Monk's draft prospect right now? And fit's going to be something that plays in a lot right now. Monk is nearing around the top 5 in most big boards. De'Aaron Fox is in the top 10. So looking at the picks right now and where it places, obviously Boston and LA, they're going to probably go Ball and Fultz because those guys are the clear-cut 1 and 2. It just really depends on how you rank those. Phoenix doesn't really need a point guard.
And then small forward.
What? The Kentucky backcourt? it would anger the gods.
Then we go to Orlando. Their possibility of having a point guard. But then again, is it really Dennis Smith, or would it be De'Aaron Fox? Then would you also bring in Frank from overseas, or the possibility of, hey, do you want to score Malik Monk? So when you look at teams like Orlando, and I would even throw Philly because they might need a point guard as well. I think we talked about that Malik Monk will probably be the best fit for Philadelphia because of his scoring, and since they already have Simmons, you don't really need a guy like De'Aaron Fox. So if you were Orlando and say, let's just take off Dennis Smith off the board and Frank off the board, and it's just De'Aaron Fox and Malik Monk, and you're going for a guard, who would fit Orlando better? And is it going to be a guy that's going to be handling the ball more, or is it going to be a guy like Malik Monk who can score?
Well, for a team with 10 starters, I mean, it's really hard to squeeze in.
They got rid of one. Remember? They got Serge out.
it comes down to there has to be a follow-up question to that is, do you believe in Elfrid Payton? That's the question that's got to be asked, because if you have a slimmer of hope and say he's our point guard, then you go Monk.
I think
because it's one of those things. Who do you value more, Fournier or Payton? Whichever one you don't, take the other.
I think especially with the way that Peyton has performed, and you haven't really seen a lot out of him. I mean, he's been decent.
Stupid hair, bad play.
Well, he's been
stupid hair.
He's been
That's
decent.
my final line.
Hashtag stupid hair, bad play.
He's been decent this year, but you haven't really seen that much athleticism from him, and you've seen the passing abilities. But I don't think you're going to take him as a starter where you see a lot of athleticism from Monk and Smith. I'm sorry, from Monk and Fox. So I think you see the athleticism in these young guards. Just to say they don't believe in Peyton. So who would you go with? Would you rather go with Fox or would you rather go with Malik Monk for Orlando situation? Just take out everything. You're taking a guard.
So I have to take either Monk or Fox?
Yes. This is a very weird situation. I'm putting you guys in a very weird situation. But again, the question is, can Fox surpass Monk?
Before I give my answer, I just want to
Jesus Christ.
Well, I want to give what's going on in my head. The people want to know.
No, they don't.
Really, really, for me, the best pick for them is what Tankathon has. A guy that we're going to talk about later in Jason Tatum, where I look at I know, but I look at their roster right now, and it's like, that to me, you put then Tatum at the 3, you can move Hazonia back over the 2, which originally
he's a dumpster.
He was going to come in. You can move Terrence Ross to the 2. You can have Fournier at the 2. You have options for that too. But if I had to pick Fox or if I had to go with Monk, I'm gonna go with Fox, only because for me, it's one of those things where I believe Fournier is a better starter right now for me than Elfrid Payton is right now. And then I can let Payton and Fox kind of figure out who's going to be that starting point guard.
I'm actually answer your question here, Sean, straight away and say it should be Malik Monk. And look, this is nothing against Fox because I think they're both great players. It's just that I think the upside of Monk is so hard to pass up on. And when I look at Orlando, I see a team without an all-star. I see a team without one surefire guy who's my blue chip player. And I guarantee Malik Monk can go out there and drop buckets for you.
So when we're talking about that, and you bring up the star power, is it because, if you're going for a player and you have a set team like Minnesota, you would rather take a guy like Fox because you have your star players, and Fox would be more of I think
Fox could be like, he can come in and be a good 6-man. I think that could be, his role. But at the same time, I think his top end is still, I think he could absolutely start for teams in the NBA right now. The biggest problem for him is his cap is lower than Monk's is. Monk, I mean, we've seen scores come out from college who have done absolutely ridiculous things in the past, averaging over 30 a game and whatnot, but there's no way that you can compare the cap of a average point guard. The problem is we're looking at one of the most loaded point guard classes. That's where my conflict is. It's there's 5 point guards in the top 10, 5 in the top 11 that are all really good players. So I think the biggest thing is I'm going to go after a shooting guard because that's where there's not a ton of depth, not a ton of value. I can address it in free agency and get myself a point guard. I can address it later in this draft and get a point guard who would have been a top 10 any other year. So why not take the best value on the board in Malik Monk?
Can I throw out this question that just popped into my head?
No.
Sure.
Who's a point guard last year that was very hyped in a top 3 type of pick, went to a team, and really has been a backup most of
Chris
this year?
Dunn, but Chris Dunn was also a senior.
Here's my thing, though. If we just look, let's say we make Chris Dunn a one and done, and we look just at his freshman year. Well, I look at the shooting percentages, about almost the same. Dunn was shooting a little bit less overall from the field than De'Aaron Fox. However, the 3-point numbers were relatively the same. A 238 clip for Fox, a little bit higher of a 286 clip for Dunn. Yes, Dunn took it 3 years, eventually got it to 372 and 44.8. Could we look at Fox and say he's kind of like a Chris Dunn where he's going to need a few years, not in college, I'm saying in the NBA, to develop and maybe get that
Here's
shot.
why it doesn't work, because Chris Dunn is just is not as athletic as De'Aaron Fox was. I mean, De'Aaron Fox is just so fast, and it's unreal how fast he can be up and down the court. And Chris Dunn was just more of an all-around player. So De'Aaron Fox,
he honestly reminds me a little bit of Jeremy Lin when he got hot. And it's that deceptive quickness, that first step quickness that you can't match. and the ability to take the ball to the hoop. And at the same time, while you're driving in, the eyes are always turning. You're always looking for that guy open.
Yeah, and the one thing with De'Aaron Fox, I mean, Chris Dunn was more of the guy who had to be a star on his team because he was the star of Providence, where, Jeremy Lin could be in that situation where he could take over games or he could just be a facilitator. De'Aaron Fox, I think, does that more where, Chris Dunn came out of college and had to learn how to take over that role where he had to be not only the leader and the scorer. I look at De'Aaron Fox and I see him, and looking currently at Kentucky, he's a guy that can take over a game as a point guard or also be a facilitator and just kind of let the other players rise up.
But what I'm looking at is the one thing that we've said from his stat line that he needs to improve. Yes, he's athletic, and it kind of goes, well, do you think that athleticism can overshadow the poor three-point shooting? Should NBA teams look at this and go, hey, you know what? De'Aaron Fox might need a year or two, maybe 3 years to get that three-point percentage to where we want it to be for a guy with his athleticism and for what we would want from him at the point guard position.
And I understand what you're saying, and you can look at Ricky Rubio as a guy who's never been able to get his three-point shot up, but he's still a valuable point guard. I mean,
absolutely.
And right now, with how young he is, I don't think you're too worried about his three-point percentage because if you're drafting him, you can just say, we don't expect him to be a three-point shooter, but he's going to be a guy who can drive, create penetration, and dish it out to his shooters. And as long as you surround him with guys who can shoot, I think that's the biggest thing. So, but the thing that why I like Monk over Fox because obviously Fox is so quick and he can dribble in and dish it out, and he's got great ball handling skills, and he's just so unreally how quick he is just really undescribable. I mean, he's undescribably fast. I'm at a loss for words. But he's so fast. But the thing with Monk is, again, that quickness can really just go away. And if a terrible injury happens where Fox is driving, he tears his ACL, we see like a D Rose situation where it goes out.
That's what I was going to bring up.
Actually, takes it out. I mean, D Rose made a living on driving, and we didn't see that jump shot from D Rose. But again, he was so quick driving, and he was so quick with his.
It's a guy who never developed his 3-point shot.
He was a guy that's so quick with his passing abilities. Monk, that's something where you tear an ACL, as long as you're able to come back, you can still shoot it, and you can still come off ball, and you can still have the ball in your hands and rise up and shoot. So that's one thing where there's less red flags with Monk, where I would take Monk over Fox because I understand where I'm getting Monk, and we talked about it, where Monk is kind of the guy where his high ceiling, but he has also a pretty high floor. And with Fox, he can completely fall off.
I think my floor for Monk is lower than Fox. I honestly think Fox is, at worst case scenario, he's a steady backup. He's a six man. He's a backup point guard. With Monk, we've seen guys come in the NBA who have great shots, but who don't translate their game to the NBA, who either slack on defense, and that becomes a liability, even though now we're allowing it a little bit more because of some of the systems like D'Antoni out there who love what you're doing, but it's coming down to, like, can the whole game bring over? Can you continue to grow? And that's where I want to see, it's so hard with 1 year of seeing these guys play in college to try to predict an entire career out for them and see, okay, well, in these 5 months when you played, how much growth did I see out of you? Malik Monk, honestly, he moved it a little bit, just a slight tick for me. Because
I was going to say, is that a red flag? Is it a red flag that we've seen? Because what you mentioned at the very beginning was Fox has been kind of a different player than we've seen earlier in the season.
Yeah.
Monk is kind of almost stayed the same, a little bit of an upcline for him. Should that be a red flag then? Because I was thinking about it when you said it.
It's like, what can...
Do you say upcline?
Upcline. Yeah, he bringing the upcline in.
Yeah, a little bit of an upcline.
I don't know if it's really red flag because, like we said, his biggest problem is consistency. We can all agree to that. Yeah. Like, if that's easy to say, but impossible to actually like put into how am I going to game plan around being a more consistent shooter. But honestly, I think the thing is it's his shot selection. If he starts off the game, 1 of 5, how are you going to turn? How are you going to make yourself take better shots? Are you going to smarter? Like, are you just going to heat check a bunch of times? Like,
Kobe just said keep shooting.
Yeah, I mean, he's not a scorer like Kobe. I mean, I think it was recently the anniversary of where Kobe had that crazy weekend where he had 40 games of over 50 points. Yep. I don't think Malik Monk's going to be able to do that, but maybe, you look at Malik Monk and I understand the inconsistency, but still, I mean, I look at these percentages that he's able to put up, and yes, one day he can go out for 2 and then put up 30, but guys are going to hit slumps, and especially in an 82-game season, that's going to struggle. But then again, I look at the big games, and I look at the UNC game, and I look at the Florida game, and I look at the Vanderbilt game where he came back. He was still able to put up points there. And yes, he didn't have the greatest shooting night against Vanderbilt, shooting around 38%, but he can still be an effective scorer, and you can still win games with him as your point, him as your shooting guard, or him as your scorer. I look at that and I say he can translate that into the playoffs, and that's the biggest thing that you want from out of these kids is how can they help you win a championship. And right now, obviously, we didn't see Monk yet step up in the NCAA tournament, against Northern Kentucky, not having a great game. But if he's able to step up and prove that he can be a scorer in the NCAA tournament, I think that's pretty much going to solidify that Monk is going to go higher than Fox, at least in the NBA draft. And I think that's how Monk is going to solidify his spot in the NBA draft over De'Aaron Fox.
For me, it all comes down to fit, whether who's going to go first. Because if I use the first 3 picks, let's book it, Fultz, Ball, and Jackson. After that,
Jackson/Tatum, whatever.
Yeah, let's say that everything is the same, and I'm looking at tankathon.com for this right now. There's really 2 teams in the top 9 or top 10 that really, for me, that could go either or, point guard, shooting guard, and that's the Magic and that's the Knicks. The only 2 right now that can go either or in the backcourt. And for me, I think that Monk might be a better choice for the Knicks. I know for if we're looking just Fox, just Monk, like you asked me.
The Knicks over the Sixers?
No, like the Sixers, Kings, T-Wolves, take Monk if you have the chance. And I'm just looking at what you asked me earlier, Fox or Monk. Really, it's the Magic and the Knicks are like, who would you rather take? And I would take Fox if I'm the Magic, Monk if I'm the Knicks. So if the Magic don't take Fox, well, because like I said, with the Magic, it's one of those things of I trust Fournier a little bit more than I do Alfred Payton, and I'd rather have that guy that can come in and, hey, maybe he can be my starter if Alfred Payton cannot. And for the Knicks, it's one of those things where the big question for them is what are they going to do with Derrick Rose? What are they going to do? And if I'm the Knicks, I go, you know what? The upside in Monk, I just take that because I still have Carmelo Anthony. And he's still the number 1 on this team.
And going off that, I mean, I would say, I don't trust any of the Magic kids and Fournier or Peyton.
Yeah.
And that's
just
why
I'm trying to work with what they got.
But that's why I go with what Dave was saying about the star potential and the ceiling of Monk and how he can take over games. And that's why I would go with Monk for the Magic, because you look at Fournier and he's dropped off 3-point percentage. He went from 40 all the way down to 34. He's obviously putting up more points, but he's playing more minutes. He's getting more shots, and he's shooting just worse if you look what he's been able to do. I mean, I haven't seen that growth in Fournier where, you see everything go up, but he's just been playing a lot of minutes, but you've seen the percentages go down. You see his per go down, and you've just seen him kind of take a drop off when he's asked to do more. So that's something that's concerning there, where Peyton, what you're going to get from Peyton. I don't think Peyton's going to flip a switch and go from a 16, 15 per player all the way up to a 20. So I look at...
shaves the head, maybe.
Maybe. But I look at, get the better
better shooting motion. Yep.
But yeah, no, I go and look at the Magic, and I look at the Knicks, and the Knicks are built on star power, and the Magic need a star. So that's why I would say Monk, and really the only way that I would take Fox over Monk is if Monk has a terrible injury or something, and he just completely bombs in the NCAA tournament, and Fox goes off for like 30 a night. Like it's going to take something. It's going to take something miraculous for Fox to jump Monk, in my mind.
Yeah, that's fair. I think for me, it comes down to just value of position. I talked about it a little earlier with how loaded the NBA is with pretty good quality point guards versus shooting guards who, I started looking at Malik's stats and just going back and forth, and it's like, all right, so he had I want to say it was 12 games shooting over 50% from 3, but then he had 20 games shooting under 40%. So it's it's hot or not. And when he does, he can pile on. Every one of those games he was over 50%. He was taking at least 4 shots, or he was making at least 4 shots. So he is a volume scorer, volume shooter. And I think that at this point in the NBA, you need 3-point shooting. You need that. And that has such an increased value. And that's why I'm going to, even though I feel like Monk is the better player, Fox is a safer bet, I am going to go with Monk because I just top end and value of the 3-point game today. So
it's the NBA today. Yeah. It's built on that 3-pointer.
And that's why I feel like you're going to get Monk going 4-5.
So put a nice little bow on it.
Yep.
You're saying that Fox cannot jump Malik Monk.
I don't think it's possible for him. Even if they make a run to the championship and, Fox ends up
led by Fox.
Yeah, I still think it's a small enough window that as long as, like you said, Monk doesn't go down with an injury, I think the upside is just, it has to be there for a shooting guard with that potential.
And you're saying Fox can't jump.
I'm going to say he can, but it's one of those things of if a team really feels like, you know what, we have the shooting guard position locked down, we need that extra point guard help. But right now, because of the 3-point percentage, I would take Monk in most situations over Fox.
And going off what you said about point guard over shooting guard, I mean, I look at at least the teams in the top 6, and I would say Monk would go to that team or fit that team better than De'Aaron Fox. If you look at Boston, L.A., well, obviously they're going to go Fultz and Ball, but you look at Phoenix, Orlando, Philadelphia, New York, Sacramento, I would say that Monk would be a better fit for them over Fox, especially if Sacramento's got the 7 and 8 and Fox and Monk are still there. Why not just pick both of them?
Thank you. Oh, shit. It's just one of our videos scared me a little bit. Don't forget to check out that one. And also don't forget to check out patreon.com/mostvaluablepodcast. But thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next time.